The United States Supreme Court has delivered a historic and dramatic ruling effectively ending former President Donald Trump's sweeping global tariff policy. In a decisive decision, the nation's highest court has done far more than simply overturn a highly controversial economic strategy. It has defended the very foundations of American democracy and drawn a clear line against presidential overreach. 6 of the 9 justices agreed that tariffs cannot be imposed through an emergency decree. This ruling marks a significant political disaster for Donald Trump. As the court affirmed, there is a democratically legitimate executive power for the US president, and then there are unconstitutional acts of self-empowerment. Even a president, the court stressed, must accept these boundaries. At the heart of the court's decision was the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, also known as IEEPA, a national emergency law from 1977. The Trump administration had invoked this law to justify comprehensive punitive and reciprocal tariffs against nearly all major trading partners. These included 25% on many imports from Canada and Mexico, sometimes over 100% on Chinese goods, and a blanket minimum tariff of 10% on almost all imports. Countries like Germany and the other European Union nations were also heavily affected. Trump's justifications for these tariffs were often shifting and at times absurd, ranging from drug crime and perceived trade deficits to national security. He unilaterally declared all these issues to be extraordinary and unusual threats, which, in his narrative, would have warranted a national emergency. In Trump's telling, the United States was a nation in decline, and his emergency legislation, with tariffs at its core, was presented as the sole remedy for this questionable assumption. But that era has now ended. The Supreme Court's ruling makes it clear that a president cannot act as if the nation is at war in such matters. The justices' verdict spoke of a transforming expansion of presidential power and warned against a permanent concentration of power in the hands of a single man. They explicitly stated that even the 1977 emergency law does not permit Trump's actions. During the proceedings, the Trump administration itself admitted that the president has no inherent original tariff authority in peacetime. Thus, it had to demonstrate that Congress had explicitly transferred this power to him, and this is precisely where it failed. Indeed, the IEEPA authorizes the president to regulate imports. However, the word tariff itself does not appear in the text. The Supreme Court unequivocally clarified, to regulate is not the same as to tax. Regulating involves setting rules, while taxing reaches into the pockets of American citizens. This is a fundamental constitutional difference. The verdict is thus a victory for Americans who can look forward to at least long-term relief from these financial burdens. The American Constitution is quite unambiguous on this point. Article 1 assigns Congress the power to levy taxes, tariffs, and duties. Tariffs are, in essence, taxes, and the authority to tax belongs to the Parliament. If the United States intends to wage a global tariff war, it is Congress that must decide this war and bear the responsibility. The Supreme Court's decision was profoundly necessary, addressing more than just the interpretation of trade or foreign economic law. The justices rendered a judgment on the very self-understanding of the presidency. Trump's tariff policy was not only highly unusual and economically reckless, but also far too radical for a balanced democracy, ultimately deemed illegal. This ruling serves as a severe rebuke for his abuse of power, though it is expected he will continue to seek other avenues to impose tariffs. Through his perverted interpretation of supposedly necessary emergency measures, Trump effectively created an emergency that threatened the separation of powers and, consequently, American democracy. The Supreme Court, as the ultimate arbiter, has now demonstrated that the system of checks and balances, the controls of the respective constitutional bodies, still functions sufficiently to prevent the worst outcomes. Stay tuned for more updates on this developing story. This video was generated using artificial intelligence. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more updates. See you next time.